Meanwhile, Portland v. Denver was every bit as epic as the Lakers v. Suns was horrible, because Portland-Denver was that good. Game 5 was that good. And not just a good game good, it was one of the best games you'll ever see. Good. That's how good that was. An instant classic. A session where you're blowing up all your friends on the phone saying, man, are you watching this? Are you seeing this? Are you getting that? It was double OT, and even that does not begin to do it justice. And while I've seen Damian Lillard do things that nobody else could even imagine or dream of doing, Dame was doing things last night that I've never seen before. Not from him, and not from anybody else for that matter. Hell, no less an authority than Kevin Durant took to Twitter, which is normally not a good idea. But he took to Twitter suggesting that he was not watching a game, but rather, quote, a spiritual experience. So you've got one future Hall of Famer to another saying that watching him play was a spiritual experience. Like, that's how insane Dame was last night. One of the best to ever do it is out here admitting that he found religion while watching Dame light it up. And while usually he is wrong, in this case, Durant was not, because Dame was in his bag, and that game had absolutely everything. But it did not start out that way, not at all. That's the crazy thing about last night. The Blazers were getting hammered early on. They were down 15 in the first quarter. They were down 22 in the second quarter. At that point, I would not have blamed you if you changed the channel and moved on to something else. Except if you know anything about Dame and that crew, that's not what you do. Because these dudes have way too much pride to shut it down. Way too much pride to even say, hey, you know what? It's not our night. It's not worth it. Let's rest, recover, and live to fight another day. That's just not their deal. That's not how they're built. Not with that talent, not with that coach, and most of all, not with that guy Dame leading from the front. No way Dame quits. No way he lets anybody around him shut it down either. They just kept chopping. They kept banging away. Next thing you know, that 22-point deficit is down to 7 in the fourth quarter. But even down 7 on the road against a team with the likely MVP, man, that's still a tough, tough ask. That's a 3 from 28 feet out to tie it and send that game to overtime. And the thing about that shot wasn't even that he made it from 28 feet out. It's that everybody knew he was going to take that shot. And everybody knew he was going to make that shot. Like, there wasn't a person in that building or watching at home who didn't think that guy wasn't going to make that shot. Because in these situations, Dame is inevitable. Inevitable. And even though regulation had just ended, that game was just starting. And while this is mostly about Dame and the absurd showing he had last night, two things are worth pointing out. One, the Denver Nuggets did win that game. They did take a 3-2 series lead. Two, the Denver Nuggets are tough as hell. They get that from their head coach, Michael Malone. If you give up a 22-point lead and then Dame hits a 28-footer to send it to OT, normally you lose that game in OT. Rare is the team that comes back from getting its soul snatched, and that's exactly what happened in that moment. What I'm saying is this. Dame went all Cal in Vegas on the Nuggets. Like, he ripped their heart right out of their chest. He showed it to them, and he made them eat it. They were not giving in. Not with Michael Malone on that bench. Not with the guys he had on that floor. They jump out to a 9-point lead in overtime. Monte Morris and Austin Rivers were putting on a show. At that point, it looked like it was Portland's turn to get crushed and deflated. Their turn to run out of gas, slam into the wall. Except that wasn't happening. It just wasn't. Not last night. Because down 9, Dame had an old-school three-point play, followed by a 31-footer, and then a 29-foot step back. That's right, a shot that was listed in the play-by-play for all of eternity as a 29-foot step back. Damian Lillard has a 29-foot step back in his bag. Morris had a chance to ice it at the line, a couple of free throws, but he missed the second. So again, here comes Portland, down 3. Dame sends it to double OT. You knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, and yet it still did. And there was nothing Denver can do about it. Like, I don't know if Dame doesn't feel pressure or if Dame feels it and likes it. Either way, he's just a different dude in those moments. He's different from everyone who's ever come before him. And again, that's not just me. John Morant tweeted at one point last night, WTF Dame. That pretty much summed it all up, right? WTF Dame. Because this isn't just some team of slaps that he was doing it to. He was doing it to a damn good Nuggets team on the road in a critical playoff game. And yet he still wasn't even done. He had the first bucket of double OT. And when Joker responded with a 3, Dame responded with yet another one of his own. At that point, he's just in video game mode. It's not human. Malone said afterwards, quote, Damian Lillard was superhuman. Again, a reminder, the Denver Nuggets won that game. But Dame is getting this entire take. And that's not about disrespecting the Nuggets, because you know I love them. It's about hyping Dame. Last night was just one of those nights. Kevin Durant broke out the full government on Twitter. Quote, I had like 4 tweets I wanted to write to describe this masterpiece by Damian Lamonte Ollie Lillard Sr. But I'm seriously at a loss for words. End of quote. The amazing thing is, Denver was hanging with him. He was a one-man army, but they were a team. And you could not find a better evidence of that than on this play that finally gave Denver the lead for good. Michael Porter Jr., if you need him, and they never needed him more than they did last night. That's why Michael Malone challenged him before the game, and it worked. The shot was perfect. The pass was even better. I mean, just an absolutely stupid pass from Joker. Throwing it from a double team, lofting it over a third defender into a perfect spot for MPJ to fire. This guy's passing is just unreal. Unfortunately for Portland, it all fell apart at that point. CJ admitted it and owned it. That's true. Brutal to lose a playoff game on those 2 plays, because that was one of the best performances you will ever see in the playoffs. That was one of the best performances you will ever see in any game, ever. 55 points in a playoff game, 8th player in history to do that. Set a playoff record for threes in a game with 12. Became the first player ever with 55 points and 10 or more assists. I can keep going. But as Dame himself would tell you, scoreboard, it does not matter what I did because we lost that game. Dang, that hurts. That is the iron truth. As transcendent a performance as that was, Portland lost, and now they're down 3-2 in that series. Honestly, it really was one of the greatest individual performances in the history of that sport, either in the postseason or in the regular season. And unfortunately for Portland, it just doesn't matter because they lost. Not my words, but the words of the guy who went truly historic. Like I said, it's got to be historic. If I'm going to start this show during the postseason and the Lakers play and they don't get the lead, you know something historic happened.